The stars looked different from the bridge of the UES Defiance. Captain Jake Morrison stood near the main window, watching the alien ship hang in space like a crystal tower. His crew worked behind him, checking systems and running scans on their first contact with beings from another world. 3 days ago, the alien vessel had appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. It came without weapons fire or threats. Instead, it sent a simple message in perfect English that made everyone on Earth stop what they were doing. We are the Galactic Council. We welcome humanity to the community of space-traveling species. Please accept our invitation to join our peaceful alliance. Now Jake stood face to face with the alien ambassador. The being called itself Zephyr 9, and it looked like a walking piece of blue crystal with lights that moved inside its body. The alien's voice came through speakers that somehow turned its strange sounds into words Jake could understand. Captain Morrison, Zephyr 9 said, your species has reached the stars faster than most. This shows great promise. The Council has watched your development with interest. Jake looked at the alien with careful eyes. Behind him, Lieutenant Amy Carter worked at the navigation station. She had been with Jake for 5 years, and he trusted her judgment completely. Commander Luke Bennett stood at the weapons console, his hand never far from the controls. Chief Science Officer Lisa Wong studied her instruments, trying to understand how the alien's technology worked. How long have you been watching us? Jake asked. The crystal alien flickered with new colors. Since your first atomic tests. The Council monitors all species that develop such weapons. Most learn to control their violent nature before reaching space travel. Your species concerns us. Jake felt his jaw tighten. Concerns you how? Humans fight constantly. Your history shows endless wars, conflicts, and competition. Most civilized species abandon such behavior before joining the galactic community. Amy looked up from her station. Captain, they've been spying on us for decades. Zephyr 9 turned toward her. Not spying, observing. The Council must ensure new members can live in peace with existing civilizations. Luke stepped forward. And if we can't meet your standards, all species can learn peace, Commander Bennett. The Council has helped thousands of civilizations make this transition. We offer knowledge, protection, and prosperity beyond your current understanding. Jake crossed his arms. In exchange for what? The alien's lights pulsed in a pattern that might have been surprise. Exchange? There is no payment required, Captain. Only agreement to follow Council laws and surrender military technologies that could threaten other species. The bridge went quiet. Jake could hear the hum of the ship's engines and the soft beeping of instruments. Every human in the room understood what the alien had just said. You want us to give up our weapons? Jake said slowly. Weapons have no place in civilized space, Captain Morrison. The Council maintains peace through unity and cooperation. Military force becomes unnecessary when all beings work together. Lisa looked up from her science station. What about species that refuse to cooperate? Pirates, criminals, hostile aliens? Such beings do not exist in Council space, Zephyr 9 replied. When all species follow Council guidance, conflict becomes impossible. Jake walked closer to the alien. Ambassador, let me make sure I understand this. You want humanity to join your Council, follow your laws, and give up our ability to defend ourselves. In return, you promise everything will be peaceful because everyone follows your rules. That is correct, Captain. The Council has maintained galactic peace for over 10,000 years using this system, and no species has ever disagreed with your rules. No one has ever rebelled or caused trouble. The alien's form shifted colors again. Rebellion cannot occur when all beings share the same peaceful goals, Captain. The Council helps species overcome their violent instincts and learn to live in harmony. Luke made a sound that might have been a laugh. Sounds like you drugged them into submission. We educate them, Commander Bennett. We show them that cooperation provides better results than competition or conflict. Jake looked around his bridge. These people had followed him through 3 years of deep space exploration. They had faced equipment failures, dangerous solar, storms, and the unknown dangers of interstellar space. They had survived because they were tough, smart, and ready to fight when necessary. Amy spoke up from her station. Captain, what about species that want to stay independent? Do they have that choice? Zephyr 9 turned toward her. Why would any species choose isolation over the benefits of Council membership? Independent civilizations struggle with resource shortages, technological limitations, and constant threat of conflict. Council members enjoy abundance, advanced knowledge, and guaranteed security. But they can choose independence if they want? Amy pressed. Theoretically, yes. However, no space-capable species has ever made such a choice. The benefits of membership far outweigh any imagined advantages of isolation. Jake studied the alien for a long moment. Everything about this situation felt wrong. The Council claimed to offer help, but they demanded complete submission in return. They promised peace, but only if everyone followed their rules without question. Ambassador, Jake said finally, I need to ask you something important. What happens to species that develop differently than you expect? What if their culture values things your Council doesn't understand? All intelligent species develop along similar paths, Captain. The Council has guided thousands of civilizations through this process. Variation occurs only in superficial matters like appearance or language. Lisa stood up from her station. That's not possible. Evolution creates diversity, not uniformity. Different worlds would produce different solutions to survival challenges. Perhaps in primitive stages, Dr. Wong. However, true civilization requires the abandonment of evolutionary thinking. Survival of the fittest gives way to cooperation of all beings. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. This alien couldn't understand that humanity's greatest strength came from their diversity and their willingness to compete and struggle. The idea of giving up those qualities to join some galactic bureaucracy made him sick. Amy, Jake said quietly, patch me through to Earth Command. Amy's fingers moved over her controls. Channel open, Captain. Earth Command, this is Captain Morrison aboard the Defiance. I need to speak with Admiral Hayes immediately. The response came back quickly. Captain Morrison, this is Admiral Hayes. The whole world is watching. What's your assessment of the situation? Jake looked at the alien ambassador, then at his crew. Admiral, the aliens want us to join their organization. They're offering technology and protection in exchange for giving up our weapons and following their laws. And your recommendation, Captain? Jake thought about humanity's history. Every great achievement had come through struggle, competition, and the willingness to stand up to those who would control them. His ancestors had fought for freedom against kings and dictators. They had explored dangerous oceans and hostile continents. They had reached for the stars despite incredible odds. Admiral, my recommendation is that we politely decline their offer. The alien's form flashed with bright colors. Captain Morrison, surely you cannot be serious. No species has ever refused Council membership. Jake turned to face Zephyr 9 directly. Then we'll be the first. Humanity appreciates your offer, but we choose to remain independent. Captain, You do not understand the implications of this decision. Without Council protection and guidance, your species will face incredible hardships. You will struggle alone in a dangerous galaxy. Ambassador, we've been struggling alone since we first stood upright on the African plains. It's made us who we are, and we're not about to change now. Luke stepped up beside his captain. Besides, we like danger. Keeps us sharp. Amy nodded from her station. We didn't come this far by playing it safe. Lisa added her agreement. Our diversity and independence are our greatest strengths. We won't trade them for your version of peace. Zephyr 9's lights pulsed in patterns that seemed agitated. This decision will have consequences far beyond your understanding. The Council will need to consider how to respond to such unprecedented behavior. You do what you need to do, Jake said. But Earth's answer is final. We thank you for the offer, but we're staying free. The alien stood silent for several moments. Finally, it spoke again. Captain Morrison, I will report your decision to the Council leadership. This conversation is not over. Yes, it is, Jake replied. Commander Bennett, please escort our guest back to the docking bay. As the alien left with Luke, Amy looked at her captain with concern. Jake, did we just make the biggest mistake in human history? Jake watched the alien ship through the window as it prepared to leave. Amy, the biggest mistake would have been giving up our freedom without a fight. Whatever comes next, we'll face it as free humans. The crystal ship disappeared into hyperspace, carrying news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. For the first time in 10,000 years, a species had chosen independence over submission. On Earth, billions of people watched the news broadcasts with mixed feelings of pride and fear. They had rejected the easy path of protected servitude and chosen the hard road of dangerous freedom. Captain Jake Morrison had just changed the course of galactic history with a simple word. No. 6 months had passed since humanity told the Galactic Council no. Admiral Kate Phillips stood in the command center of Fort Liberty Station, watching. Reports flow in from 12 new human colonies scattered across the outer rim of the galaxy. The station hung in space around the 4th planet of the Ross system, a massive structure built from Earth steel and human determination. Unlike the smooth, curved designs that other species seem to prefer, Fort Liberty looked exactly like what it was. A military fortress designed to protect human interests in hostile space. Admiral, Commander Ryan Torres said from his position. At the communications console, we're getting another message from the Council, 3rd one this week. Kate didn't look up from the tactical display showing the locations of human settlements. Each green dot represented thousands of people who had chosen to leave Earth behind and build new lives among the stars. Same demands as before? Yes, ma'am. They want us to stop expanding and submit to Council authority. They're claiming we're violating some kind of galactic law by establishing colonies without their permission. Kate finally turned to look at Ryan. He was a good officer, steady under pressure and smart enough to see the bigger picture. Any actual threats this time? No, ma'am. Still just diplomatic protests and legal citations. No mention of military action. Kate smiled grimly. That told her everything she needed to know about the Council's real capabilities. If they could back up their demands with force, they would have done it by now. Instead, they kept sending angry messages like frustrated bureaucrats. What's the latest from New Arizona? She asked. Ryan pulled up another report. Colony Director Ben Crawford says the mining operation is ahead of schedule. They've extracted more rare earth minerals in 6 months than the Council claimed was possible in 5 years. Kate nodded. That was typical human behavior. When someone said something couldn't be done, humans usually took it as a challenge rather than a warning. The Council had declared New Arizona too dangerous for settlement because of its unstable planetary core and frequent seismic activity. Humans had looked at the same information and seen opportunity. Ben Crawford was a former mining engineer from Colorado who had volunteered to lead the New Arizona expedition. His team had developed new drilling techniques that could work around the planet's geological instability. Instead of avoiding the danger, they had learned to work with it. Any problems with the local environment? Kate asked. Some. Dr. Helen Crawford reports that the native plant life is more aggressive than initially thought, but the colonists are adapting. They've developed new protective gear and modified their habitat designs. Kate wasn't surprised. Helen Crawford was a xenobiologist who had studied alien life forms for years before joining the colonial program. She understood better than most that survival meant adaptation, not submission. The Crawfords represented everything that made humans different from council species. When faced with a dangerous environment, they didn't ask for help or wait for someone else to solve their problems. They studied the challenge, developed solutions, and made it work through determination and intelligence. What about trade relations? Kate asked. Any contact with alien merchants? Ryan hesitated before answering. Officially, no. The Council has banned all trade with non-member species, but we're picking up some irregular communications traffic near the border systems. Kate understood what he wasn't saying directly. Despite the Council's official policies, some alien traders were making secret contact with human colonies. The temptation was obvious. Humans were producing goods and materials that other species wanted, and they were doing it faster and cheaper than anyone expected. Captain Tony Russo had reported several encounters with alien merchants who approached his cargo ship, the Prairie Wind, in neutral space. The aliens claimed they were just conducting routine patrols, but they always seemed interested in what goods Russo was carrying. Captain Russo filed another interesting report yesterday, Ryan said, as if reading Kate's thoughts. He made unofficial contact with a trader from something called the Cree Collective. Apparently, they were fascinated by our ship designs. Kate pulled up the report on her personal display. Russo described meeting with Creetal, an alien trader, who commanded a vessel designed for maximum efficiency and comfort. The alien had been amazed by human ship construction, which prioritized durability and defensive capability over luxury features. According to Russo's report, Creetal couldn't understand why humans built their ships with so much redundancy and firepower. When Russo explained that human vessels were designed to survive in dangerous situations without outside help, the alien had gone silent for several minutes. What was the alien's reaction? Kate asked. Russo says the trader seemed confused by our philosophy. Apparently, most council species design their ships assuming they'll always have help available if something goes wrong. The idea of being truly self-sufficient was foreign to him. Kate thought about that for a moment. It made sense when she considered the Council's approach to civilization. If you lived in a completely controlled environment where someone else guaranteed your safety, you might never develop the skills needed to handle real problems. Any word from our deep space scouts? She asked. Captain Eric Stone reported in from the Vega sector yesterday. He says there are signs of some kind of political trouble in Council space. Increased military patrols, unusual communication traffic, ships moving in patterns that suggest emergency protocols. Kate raised an eyebrow. Emergency protocols for what? Unknown, ma'am, but Stone thinks our rejection of council membership might have caused more disruption than we realized. That was an interesting development. Kate had assumed the Council would simply ignore humanity after their initial rejection. The idea that human independence was causing problems in alien space suggested the situation was more complicated than it appeared. "Get me a secure line to Earth Command," she ordered. Ryan's fingers moved over his console. "Channel open, Admiral." "Earth Command. This is Admiral Phillips at Fort Liberty. I need to speak with General Bobby Taylor about the strategic situation." The response came back within seconds. "Admiral Phillips, this is General Taylor. I was hoping you'd call. We've been monitoring some unusual activity in Council space." Kate leaned forward. "What kind of activity, General?" "Our long-range sensors are picking up ship movements that don't match normal Council patrol patterns. It looks like they're repositioning forces, but we can't determine why. Are you seeing anything from your position?" "Some signs of increased activity, but nothing specific." "What's Earth's assessment?" "Honestly, Admiral, we're not sure what to make of it. The Council's military forces are designed for peacekeeping operations, not actual warfare, but they seem to be mobilizing something." Kate considered the implications. If the Council was moving military assets, it might mean they were planning some kind of action against human colonies, or it might mean they were dealing with problems somewhere else. "General, what's our current defensive posture?" "All colonies are on elevated alert status. We've increased patrol frequency and improved communication protocols. If the Council decides to test our resolve, we'll be ready." Kate nodded, even though Taylor couldn't see her. "Understood, General. We'll maintain our expansion schedule unless the situation changes dramatically." After ending the communication, Kate turned back to the tactical display. The green dots representing human colonies seemed small and isolated against the vast map of Council space. But each one represented something the galaxy hadn't seen in thousands of years. Truly independent settlements answering to no authority except their own people. On New Montana, Colonel Frank Mitchell was dealing with a different kind of challenge. His colony specialized in agricultural development, turning hostile alien environments into productive farmland. The work was difficult and dangerous, but the results spoke for themselves. Mitchell's people had developed crops that could grow in alien soil, livestock that could survive in strange atmospheres, and farming techniques that worked with local weather patterns instead of fighting against them. The Council had declared New Montana unsuitable for agriculture, but human farmers had proven them wrong. "Colonel," Sergeant Lisa Barnes reported, "we've got another request for agricultural consultation from the Kepler Station Trading Hub. They want to know if we can help them improve their food production efficiency." Mitchell looked up from his daily reports. Kepler Station was technically neutral territory, used by multiple species for trade and commerce. If they were asking humans for help, it meant their current methods weren't working well enough. "What kind of problems are they having?" "Crop failures mostly. Their current farming techniques produce enough food for survival, but not enough for prosperity. They've heard about our success here and want to learn our methods." Mitchell thought about it carefully. Sharing human agricultural knowledge with aliens wasn't technically against any Earth policies, and it might help build positive relationships with non-Council species. "Set up a meeting," he decided. "We'll see what we can do to help them." These interactions were happening across human space. Colonial directors, ship captains, and military commanders were making. The great crystal chamber of Nexus Prime had never seen anything like this. High Counselor Vex Thalan stood at the center of the vast room, his ancient form radiating the authority of 10,000 years of galactic leadership. Around him, representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the chamber with their various forms of communication, creating a chaos of sounds that the universal translators struggled to process. But today was different. Today, for the first time in recorded history, a member species was formally requesting to leave the Galactic Council. Vexthalan raised his primary appendage for silence. The chamber gradually quieted as hundreds of alien eyes focused on the proceedings. His species, the Eternal Ones, had founded the Council eons ago when they first discovered other intelligent life among the stars. They had spent millennia building the perfect system of galactic governance based on peace, cooperation, and unity. The Andromedan Confederacy has requested formal withdrawal from Council membership, Vexthalan announced, his voice carrying across the chamber through advanced acoustic systems. War Chief Zara Keth will present their case. The Andromedan representative stepped forward, and several nearby species shifted uncomfortably. Zara Keth was imposing even by Andromedan standards, standing nearly 3 meters tall with natural armor plating and predatory features that reminded other species why her people had once been feared across the galaxy. The Andromedans were one of the few warrior races that had been convinced to join the Council, trading their military traditions for the promise of peace and prosperity. Honored counselors, Zara Keth began, her voice carrying the harsh tones, of a species evolved for command and conflict. My people have served this body faithfully for 700 years. We have followed Council law, contributed to Council prosperity, and suppressed our natural instincts in the name of galactic harmony. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. Such language hadn't been heard in these halls for centuries. But recent events have opened our eyes to what we have lost, the war chief continued. The human species has shown us that it is possible to maintain strength while pursuing peace, to remain independent while cooperating with others, and to prosper without surrendering our essential nature. Vexthalan's form flickered with colors that indicated deep concern. War Chief Zara Keth. The humans rejected Council membership and chose isolation. Surely you do not wish to follow such a path of loneliness and struggle. Zara Keth's expression showed something that might have been amusement. Honored counselor, the humans are not isolated. They have established 12 thriving colonies, developed trade relationships with multiple species, and achieved in 6 months what Council projections claimed would take them decades. They have done this not despite their independence, but because of it. The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives processed this information. Many had heard rumors about human activities, but few understood the scope of their achievements. Furthermore, Zara Keth said, raising her voice above the noise, the humans have shown respect for other species while maintaining their own identity. They do not seek to conquer or convert others to their way of thinking. They simply refuse to abandon their nature for the sake of artificial harmony. Counselor Dex Marin of the Pacifist Coalition rose from his designated area. His species resembled large, floating jellyfish, and had been among the first to embrace complete nonviolence under Council guidance. War Chief, the humans' approach leads inevitably to conflict and chaos. History shows that species which maintain military capabilities eventually use them. Does it, Counselor? Zara Keth challenged. Or does history show that species which abandon their ability to defend themselves become vulnerable to those who would exploit their weakness? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. For millennia, the Council had taught that the abandonment of military capability was the foundation of civilized behavior. The idea that defensive strength might actually promote peace rather than conflict was revolutionary. The humans have not attacked anyone, Zara Keth continued. They have not threatened Council territory or interfered with Council operations. They have simply chosen to remain free, and their success has inspired others to question whether freedom and peace are truly incompatible. Vexthalan extended several sensory appendages in a gesture of deep thought. War Chief, even if human methods have achieved short-term success, the long-term consequences of abandoning council guidance are unpredictable. Without central coordination, species inevitably develop conflicts of interest that lead to violence. Honored. Counselor, Zaraketh replied, my people have observed council operations for 7 centuries. We have seen how central coordination often creates more problems than it solves. When species must ask permission for every significant decision, innovation dies. When conflicts must be resolved through bureaucratic processes, real solutions become impossible. The war chief gestured toward the massive chamber around them. Look at this place, counselors. When did we last make a decision that truly helped anyone? When did we last solve a problem rather than simply managing it? We have become administrators of stagnation, not leaders of progress. Counselor Yex Prime of the Silicon Brotherhood activated his translation matrix. His species had evolved from crystalline structures and communicated through electromagnetic pulses. War Chief Zaraketh, you speak of problems, but the Council has maintained galactic peace for 10,000 years. What greater achievement could be possible? Peace without. Purpose is not achievement, Counselor, Zaraketh responded. It is merely the absence of conflict. True peace comes when strong beings choose cooperation over conquest, when free species work together because they see mutual benefit, not because they are compelled by authority. And you believe the Andromedan Confederacy can achieve more outside the Council than within it? Vexthalan asked. I believe, honored Counselor, that we can achieve our full potential only when we are free to pursue it. The Council demands that we surrender our warrior traditions, suppress our competitive instincts, and conform to a standard of behavior that denies our fundamental nature. We have done this for 7 centuries, and what do we have to show for it? Zaraketh paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. Our young no longer know how to face challenges with courage. Our leaders have forgotten how to make difficult decisions without consensus from hundreds of other species. We have traded our strength for safety, and in doing so, we have become weak. The chamber fell silent. Several species began private communications among themselves, using encrypted channels that couldn't be monitored by the central systems. War Chief, Vexthalan said finally, withdrawal from the Council means loss of protection, loss of trade benefits, and loss of technological sharing agreements. Your people would face the galaxy alone. Not alone, honored Counselor, free. And freedom, we have learned from the humans, is worth any price. Meanwhile, in human space, Admiral Kate Phillips was dealing with the consequences of galactic upheaval from a very different perspective. Her intelligence officers had been monitoring Council communications for months, and the reports were becoming increasingly alarming. Admiral, Commander Ryan Torres said from his station at Fort Liberty, we're seeing massive increases in Council military activity. 3 battle groups have moved to positions near our territory, and we're detecting what appears to be emergency communications between major Council worlds. Kate studied the tactical displays showing Council fleet movements. The aliens had never deployed this many military assets before, at least not in any pattern that human intelligence could identify. Any direct threats to our colonies? No, ma'am. They're maintaining distance from our territory, but they're definitely positioning themselves for some kind of action. Kate activated her personal communication system. Get me Colonel Mitchell on New Montana. Frank Mitchell's face appeared on her screen within moments. The agricultural colony director looked tired but alert. "Admiral, good to hear from you. We've been monitoring unusual traffic in this sector." "What kind of traffic, Colonel?" "Alien ships passing through our area without stopping or communicating. Some of them are transmitting on frequencies we've never seen before. My communications officer thinks they might be using some kind of emergency protocols." Kate processed this information along with dozens of similar reports from other colonies. The pattern was clear. Something major was happening in Council space, and it was connected to humanity's presence in the galaxy. "Colonel, have you had any contact with non-Council species recently?" Mitchell nodded. "Actually, yes. We've been approached by several independent trader groups who seem very interested in our agricultural techniques, and yesterday something unusual happened." "Go on." "A ship arrived carrying what appears to be a diplomatic delegation from the Centauri Republic. They're one of the Council's founding members, but they've requested a private meeting to discuss matters of mutual interest. I haven't responded yet, because I wanted to check with Earth Command first." Kate felt her pulse quicken. The Centauri Republic was one of the most influential species in Council space. If they were making unauthorized contact with human colonies, it suggested the situation was far more serious than Earth's leaders had realized. "Colonel, set up the meeting but keep it unofficial. 2 years after humanity's rejection of Council membership, the galaxy looked completely different." President Maria Santos stood in the command center of Unity 1, Earth's newest orbital station, watching reports flood in from across known space. What had started as a simple desire for independence had become something far larger and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. "Madam President," General Bobby Taylor said from his position at the strategic planning table, "we now have confirmation that 17 species have formally withdrawn from Council membership. Another 43 have suspended compliance with Council directives, and at least 12 more are openly debating withdrawal." Maria studied the holographic display showing the current political map of the galaxy. Large sections that had once been solid Council territory now showed various colors representing independent systems, rebel factions, and areas of disputed control. "What's the situation with the Council's central authority?" she asked. "Collapsing," Dr. Patricia Klein replied from her position at the Xenosociology station. High Counselor Vex Thalon has called 7 emergency sessions in the past month, but attendance keeps dropping. Some species are simply ignoring Council summons entirely. Maria walked closer to the display, noting the patterns of rebellion spreading outward from the areas closest to human space. "Are we being blamed for this chaos?" "Officially, yes," General Taylor said. "The Council leadership is claiming that human influence has corrupted otherwise peaceful species and encouraged them to abandon civilized behavior." "And unofficially?" Dr. Klein smiled grimly. "Unofficially, even Council loyalists are beginning to admit that the problems run much deeper than human influence. 10,000 years of enforced conformity has created a system that can't adapt to change or handle dissent." Maria nodded thoughtfully. The reports from human diplomats and intelligence officers painted a picture of a galactic government that had grown so dependent on universal compliance that it had no mechanisms for dealing with opposition. "What's the status of our diplomatic initiatives?" she asked. Senator Alex North stepped forward from his position near the communication console. He had been appointed as humanity's unofficial ambassador to the growing coalition of former Council members. "Madam President, the situation is evolving rapidly. The Centauri Republic has formally established diplomatic relations with Earth, and is requesting military cooperation agreements. Military cooperation? Yes, ma'am. Prime Minister. Velnoth believes the Council may attempt to use force to maintain control over rebellious systems. The Centauri want assurance that Earth will help defend independent worlds against Council military action. Maria considered the implications carefully. Military alliances would represent a significant escalation in the conflict between human-led, independence movements and Council authority. General Taylor, what's your assessment of Council military capabilities? The General activated a new section of the holographic display showing Council fleet positions and estimated combat effectiveness. Madam President, the Council's military forces are designed for peacekeeping operations against cooperative populations. They have numbers, but they lack the training, equipment, and doctrine needed for actual warfare. However, he continued, some of their member species retain significant military potential. The hegemony of Tsar, for example, maintains a powerful fleet that could pose a serious threat if fully deployed. Dr. Klein added her perspective. The political situation makes Council military action complicated, General. Many of their remaining member species are questioning the use of force against former allies. Military action could trigger even more defections. Maria walked to the main viewing window, looking out at the stars that now represented a galaxy in turmoil. Earth had never wanted to become the center of an interstellar revolution, but circumstances had forced them into that role. Senator North, she said, what are the Centauri actually proposing? They want to establish a defensive alliance of independent systems, Madam President. Not an empire or confederation, but a mutual defense pact that would guarantee each member's right to self-governance while providing collective security against external threats. It was an interesting proposal. Unlike the Council's system of centralized authority, this alliance would preserve each species' independence while providing the benefits of cooperation. Who else is interested in this arrangement? The Andromedans, obviously. The Vorthon Collective, the Free Traders Alliance, and at least 6 other former Council members. They're calling it the Independent Systems Coalition. Maria made her decision. Schedule a meeting with Prime Minister Velnoth and War Chief Zaraketh. If we're going to do this, we need to do it right. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the consequences of galactic upheaval were playing out in hundreds of different ways. On the trading station Sigma-7, Captain Tony Russo was witnessing the collapse of the old economic order firsthand. This place is falling apart, he told his crew as they docked the Prairie Wind at what had once been the galaxy's largest commercial hub. Half the docking bays stood empty. Automated systems had been shut down to save power, and various species were fighting over territorial control of different sections. Captain, his navigator Jenny Clark said, I'm picking up distress signals from at least 12 different vessels. Looks like they're stranded here because the Council pulled out their administrative staff. Tony shook his head in amazement. Sigma-7 had been one of the Council's greatest achievements, a massive space station that facilitated trade between hundreds of species. Now it was becoming a chaotic free-for-all as different groups tried to establish control over various sections. Any word from the station authority? He asked. What station authority? His engineer Mike Davis replied from the engine room. The Council administrators abandoned their posts 3 weeks ago. Now it's every species for themselves. But the chaos wasn't entirely destructive. As Tony made his way through the station's commercial districts, he discovered that many traders were adapting to the new reality with remarkable creativity. Captain Russo, called out Cretel, the alien trader he had met months earlier. Excellent timing. I have a business proposition for you. The 4-legged alien seemed much more energetic than Tony remembered. Instead of the careful, bureaucratic approach he had displayed during their previous meeting, Kreetal now moved with the purposeful energy of an entrepreneur who saw opportunity in chaos. "What kind of proposition?" Tony asked. "The Council's trade regulations are no longer being enforced. For the first time in centuries, we can engage in direct commerce without filing requests, waiting for approvals, or paying administrative fees. I propose we establish a permanent trading partnership." Tony considered the offer carefully. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Your people produce goods that are superior in quality and efficiency to anything available through official council channels. My people have access to resources and markets throughout this sector. Together we can build a trading network that serves everyone's interests." It was exactly the kind of deal that would have been impossible under council regulations. Now, with the old system crumbling, innovative beings were finding new ways to cooperate and prosper. "I'm interested," Tony said. "But we'll need security arrangements. Things are getting pretty wild out here." Kreetal's expression showed what might have been amusement. "Captain, have you met the Andromedans who are establishing a security service for independent traders? War Chief Zara Keth's people are offering protection in exchange for modest fees, much more efficient than council bureaucracy." The conversation was interrupted by an announcement echoing through the station's communication system. "Attention all vessels and personnel. This is Commander Sarah Brooks of the Earth Defense Force Vessel Ranger. Sigma-7 is now under the protection of the Independent Systems Coalition. All beings are welcome to conduct lawful commerce under Coalition guidelines." Tony looked at Kreetal with surprise. "The humans are taking over the station?" "Not taking over, Captain. Providing order so that free trade can continue. There is a difference." As if to prove the point, Commander Brooks's next announcement clarified the situation. "All current residents and traders may continue their activities without interference. Coalition forces are here only to maintain basic order and prevent violence. No fees, no administrative requirements, no restrictions on lawful commerce." Tony smiled broadly. This was exactly the kind of practical solution that humans excelled at finding. Instead of trying to control every aspect of the situation, they were simply providing the minimal structure needed for people to solve their own problems. The same pattern was repeating across the galaxy. As council authority collapsed, human-led coalitions were stepping in to provide basic services while preserving individual freedom. It wasn't perfect, and it certainly wasn't peaceful, but it was working. On New Montana, Colonel Frank Mitchell was dealing with a very different aspect of the galactic transformation. His agricultural colony had become an unexpected center for refugee assistance as displaced populations fled the chaos in council space. "Colonel," Sergeant Lisa Barnes reported, "we've got another group of refugees requesting settlement assistance. This time it's..." 5 years had passed since Captain Jake Morrison first told the Galactic Council no. Now, President Maria Santos stood before the newly constructed Galactic Assembly on the neutral world of Concordia, looking out at representatives from 47 different species who had chosen cooperation over submission. The assembly building itself represented everything that had changed in the galaxy. Instead of the imposing crystal structure that had housed the old council on Nexus Prime, this facility was built from materials contributed by every member species. Human steel supported Andromedan stone, while Centauri energy systems powered Vorthan engineering marvels. It was functional rather than intimidating, practical rather than symbolic. "Delegates," Maria began, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber through translation systems that respected each species' unique communication methods. 5 years ago, humanity made a simple choice: We chose freedom over security, independence over membership, and the right to determine our own destiny over the promise of protection." She paused, looking at the diverse assembly of beings who had made similar choices. War Chief Zaraketh sat in the Andromedan section, her imposing figure now relaxed rather than tense. Prime Minister Velnoth of the Centauri Republic occupied a place of honor near the center, his silver skin reflecting the chamber's lights. Representatives from dozens of species that had never been allowed to interact under council law now worked together on matters of mutual interest. "We did not set out to challenge galactic civilization," Maria continued. "We simply refused to surrender our essential nature for the promise of peace. That choice has led us all to this moment, where free beings choose to work together, not because they are compelled to do so, but because they recognize the value of cooperation between equals." Admiral Kate Phillips, now commanding the joint Human-Andromedan Defense Fleet, watched from the military section as delegates responded to the president's words. The transformation of the galaxy's military situation was perhaps the most dramatic change of all. "Admiral," Commander Ryan Torres whispered, "the Council's representative has just entered the system. High Counselor Vex Thalan is requesting permission to address the Assembly." Kate nodded thoughtfully. The remnants of the old Council controlled fewer than 30 systems now, barely a fraction of their former territory. Most of their military assets had defected to independent systems or simply abandoned their posts. Vex Thalan's arrival suggested that even the Council leadership was finally ready to acknowledge the new reality. In the Assembly chamber, Senator Alex North was presenting the latest economic data from the Independent Systems Coalition. The numbers told a remarkable story of growth, innovation, and prosperity that had emerged from the chaos of the old system's collapse. Trade volume between coalition members has increased by 400% over the past 2 years, he reported. Technological innovation is at levels not seen in the galaxy for centuries. Most importantly, these achievements have been accomplished without central planning, without bureaucratic oversight, and without the surrender of any species' fundamental identity. The success wasn't limited to economics. Captain Tony Russo, now president of the Free Traders Alliance, had established commercial networks that connected the most remote corners of the galaxy. His organization operated on principles of voluntary cooperation and mutual benefit that would have been impossible under Council regulations. The old system treated trade as something that needed to be controlled and limited, Russo explained to a gathering of merchant representatives. "We've proven that free beings trading voluntarily create more prosperity for everyone than any centralized system ever could." The proof was visible throughout coalition space. Former Council worlds that had struggled under bureaucratic restrictions were now thriving centers of commerce and innovation. New Montana had become an agricultural hub that fed dozens of systems. New Arizona's mining operations supplied raw materials for construction projects across the galaxy. Dr. Patricia Klein, now director of the Galactic Cultural Institute, had documented the social changes that accompanied political and economic transformation. Her research showed patterns of renewal and creativity that seemed to emerge wherever species regained their freedom to determine their own destinies. "What we're witnessing is unprecedented in galactic history," she told the Assembly's Science Committee. "Species that had been culturally stagnant for centuries are experiencing Renaissance periods. Art, literature, music, scientific research, all are flourishing in ways that the old system never allowed." The cultural changes were particularly evident among the younger generations. Children who had grown up under the new system displayed creativity, initiative, and independence that amazed their elders. Human children played alongside young Andromedans, learning each other's traditions while developing new forms of expression that combined elements from multiple cultures. Colonel Frank Mitchell, now governing the multi-species colony on New Montana, watched these developments with satisfaction. His settlement had become a model for successful integration between different species based on shared values rather than enforced conformity. The key, he explained to other colonial administrators, is to maintain clear standards of behavior while respecting cultural differences. Everyone contributes according to their abilities, everyone benefits according to their efforts, and everyone is free to maintain their unique identity. But the transformation hadn't been without challenges. Some species had struggled to adapt to independence after millennia of dependent relationship with central authority. A few had retreated into isolation, unable to function without external guidance. Others had attempted to recreate the old system on a smaller scale, establishing local dictatorships that oppressed their own populations. General Bobby Taylor, now coordinating coalition defense forces, had been forced to intervene in several cases where former council members had attempted to impose authoritarian control over their populations. Freedom requires eternal vigilance, he reminded coalition military commanders. We must be prepared to defend not only our own independence, but the right of all beings to live free from oppression. The coalition's military philosophy was fundamentally different from both the old council's peacekeeping approach and traditional conquest-based warfare. Coalition forces existed to protect freedom rather than to impose control, to defend the weak rather than to serve the strong. This philosophy was tested when the hegemony of Tsar, one of the Council's few remaining military powers, attempted to reconquer several independent systems that had formerly been under their control. The coalition response was swift and decisive. Admiral Phillips led a joint fleet that included human destroyers, Andromedan battlecruisers, and Centauri support vessels. Instead of engaging in a war of conquest, coalition forces focused on liberating oppressed populations and establishing conditions that would prevent future aggression. We're not here to defeat the hegemony, Phillips explained to her commanders before the operation began. We're here to free their victims and demonstrate that oppression will not be tolerated in coalition space. The campaign was successful, beyond all expectations. When coalition forces reached the conquered systems, they found local populations ready to assist in their own liberation. The hegemony's military units, many of which were composed of conscripted soldiers from subject species, began defecting en masse when offered the opportunity to join free forces fighting for their own people's independence. Within 6 months, the hegemony had collapsed from within, its subject populations establishing their own independent governments and requesting coalition membership. The success of these operations established the coalition as the dominant power in the galaxy, but it was a very different kind of dominance than the old council had exercised. Instead of ruling through bureaucratic control, the coalition led through example and mutual cooperation. High Counselor Vex Thalan's arrival at Concordia represented the final acknowledgement of this new reality. The ancient being, who had once ruled most of the galaxy, now controlled only a handful of core worlds populated by species that feared independence more than they valued freedom. "President Santos," Vex Thalan said when he was finally granted an audience with coalition leadership, "I come to request terms for the formal dissolution of the Galactic Council and the integration of remaining council systems into your new order." Maria studied the alien leader whose species had dominated galactic politics for millennia. Age and defeat had diminished his imposing presence, but she could still sense the intelligence and experience that had built the old system. "High Counselor," she replied. The Coalition doesn't seek to replace the Council's authority with our own. We offer membership to any species that embraces the principles of freedom, cooperation, and mutual respect. But membership must be freely chosen, not imposed. And those species that cannot adapt to independence? Maria considered the question carefully. The Coalition will provide assistance to any species that genuinely wants to learn self-governance. We will protect the innocent from oppression and defend the weak against exploitation. But we will not force anyone to be free. Vex Thalen's form flickered with colors that indicated deep thought. President Santos, my species created the Council because we believed